This meeting is being recorded.
So the webinar is live now. Attendees can join. I can say attendees are joining.
Yeah, fine.
Hello everyone, thank you for joining. We'll start in a couple of minutes so that we are waiting for others to join too. We'll just start in a couple of minutes. Meanwhile, you can avail the chat box and Q&A box for asking any questions during the session, and ma'am will address them post the session. Thank you.
Yes, Deepti, thank you for the session. If you can share any screens over here, it would be fine. Do you have it?
Kyle ma'am, I guess you can start with the session.
Shall we go ahead? It's 1:05
Yeah.
and we have a good number of participants to begin with. I think we can go ahead, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. A very good day to all. I am Dr. Kyle from BVRT Hyderabad campus. So welcome you all to the very first workshop of WITS Datathon 2022. So I'm sure we are all are aware of WITS Datathon, and this is the fifth annual WITS Datathon, which is organized by worldwide WITS team, Stanford University, Harvard University, IACS, which is also called as Institute for Applied Computational Science, and WITS Datathon Committee. So this year, WITS will address an important way to mitigate the effects of climate change with a focus on energy efficiency. So I'm also proud to say the WITS Hyderabad is organized by the supporting partners, Sri Vishnu Educational Society, Novartis, and Vavi. So without the supporting partners, this exciting event is not possible. And this has been continuously going through. And so we're happy to welcome all the participants for today's workshop. And for this workshop, that is for WITS 2022, we'll be conducting different workshops, and we'll also share lots of notebook and videos for the participants to get motivated and to stay connected with the datathon. And in this row, today we have workshop 1, which is driven by Miss Pranya. And she will run us through the live challenge that is with WITS. Okay, so I would like to introduce Ms. Pragna to you all. So she is currently working as a data scientist with Fractal Hyderabad. And before that, she was working with the Bank of America, and she also pursued a Tech Leader Fellowship at Plaksha. So more than everything, I'm proud. I'm also very proud to say that she is our alumna, and she has graduated in 2019 from CSE, that is Computer Science and Engineering Department, and from BVRAT Hyderabad College of Engineering for Women. So Pragna, really it is a proud moment for us to have you here today to run us through the live challenge. There we have very enthusiastic participants. You can see the number of participants joining in, and welcome you all. And we are, and I'm very sure that you will drive us through really factual information. So that will be the first motivation for these students and participants to get enrolled, right? So thank you, and I'll not take much more time. And over to you, Pragya.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Padmanabham. I'm so great to be here, and it's so nice to see so many participants on a Sunday afternoon. And it's also so great to see that all of you are from BVRIT, and it's always great to like get back together on one platform, albeit it being Zoom. So I would like to get an idea of the participants that we have today to like get a temperament. So can we have a quick poll of how many of you are participating like in a Kaggle competition for the first time? Could you like just raise your hands, or can Yashodipti have a poll?
The poll is live now.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting. So for the first time, yeah, there are a few quite good number of participants, and we have experienced participants as well. 10% of experienced participants.
Great. So yeah, I think the poll is still running. We'll just have it for like a minute more. Yeah, so I think 89% of the participants are participating like in a Kaggle competition for the first time, which is absolutely great. And I also think Kaggle competition for a first timer could be kind of overwhelming, because when you see like the leaderboard where there are people dynamically changing every day, you might get overwhelmed that, oh, what am I doing? Why am I not there in the top 3? Why am I not there in the top 5? But trust me, like as you keep doing, as you keep iterating through the data set, in like no time you will see yourself in top 3, and you'd have no idea how. So that is all part of how Kaggle works, and there's nothing to be afraid of or overwhelmed of. And I'd also like to know, like, can we have the next poll, please? Yashodipti?
Yeah, just a minute.
Yeah, this is also you have 16% of experienced people going on, and 82. So this is a good ground for you to run through the live challenge actually.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah,
Because there's so many points to discuss, and
right, right.
we don't have to be redundant about it, because if I keep reiterating through the same points, then you'd all just end up getting bored.
Yes.
So yeah, this is also a very interesting poll. Yeah, so I'm also going to ask the last question. I think this is kind of obvious now that I've seen the participants, but I'll just launch it nevertheless. Most of us are post 2019, right? Like 2020, 2021. And I think many of you have not graduated, like you just started out first and second year of engineering.
Yes, that 2019 is more. Before 2000 also we have 2% of people are there here.
Yeah.
Yeah, most post 2019. So they are currently pursuing their graduation.
Great. So this kind of sets the ground running so that we know what exactly to run through and what exactly to talk about. So one tidbit that I would like to say about, being a starter in data science is that when I was in college, our HOD was Vasanti ma'am, and Our principal was, of course, Sunita ma'am. And I was always chasing professors to give me data science internships or help me how to get started in data science always, like since second year of engineering. Because I was in computer science background. So most of my peers were like very busy honing their competitive programming skills. And back then, we didn't really have an AI ML specialization in undergrad at all. It was just CSE, and we had like around 120 students. And all of us had like basic CS courses. But the introduction to me for data science in general was probably DBMS in second year, because that was when I knew what potential data in general had. Like when you look at a data set, you see that what wonders that it can do. If you forget about the machine learning part, if you forget about what algorithms you could use, data decision trees and all that, in general, if you just look at a data set of maybe 100 rows or 200 rows even, you understand the great potential it has to give us any result that we want. All you have to do is learn how to manipulate it. So that was like the first inspiration for me, or maybe all of you, to like, pursue data science or machine learning or analytics or even business analytics as a career. And the Women in Data Science is like a wonderful initiative for all of us, because it provides a gateway to venture into the world of data science, regardless of our experience and background. If you want to like get a data science internship and then start working on a data set without experience or being a second year or first year engineering student, it's very difficult to like prove yourself, right? So Kaggle competitions and Women in Data Science organization in general helps you get your hands dirty and helps you get into a real-time data set right away. So that is one thing which I feel is very, very good, because I got introduced to Kaggle probably in my third or fourth year of engineering, which was, I think I was in a setback because all of you are starting so quick, and yeah, that's amazing.
And one more surprise for you. Now we have BVA at Hyderabad campus, we have BTech CSE IML stream specialization and MTech in data science as well. So happy to say that.
Yeah, that's also amazing.
Hope you're aware of it.
Yeah. Because for me, the first way I got to know about data science in general was, of course, the hype around it. And also DBMS was like my first step. So this is like, you can get a quick overview of whatever is happening. Like in the first year itself, you get to learn. You also have Python courses and all from the first year itself, right?
Yes, we have exclusively this women vice session, right? Women in software engineering. So they have different streams of Python courses running on. So people are getting aware even from the first year. They get to know what is happening. So that is the update we have here.
Yeah. So how many of you have looked at the data set of the 2022 Datathon? Could you just raise your hands? Like, how many of you have registered and had a quick look at the data set, even though you didn't start? Great. So we do have a bunch of people who are very enthusiastic and have started before anyone else did. You will definitely have a heads up, because 2 months is a long time to like do many things.
So this workshop should help them. This count will go ahead. So this is
yeah. Great. So I'm just going to share my screen. Yeah, please let me know if you can see my screen.
Yeah, it is perfect. Go ahead.
Great. So what I'm going to do today is very basic. Let us just go through and have an overview of the data set and see how to get started. Like, what are the first few steps you could probably do before actually running the algorithms or figuring out what machine learning models to use. It's very important to first look at the data and see what is going on. Because in the beginning, we are just so enthusiastic of just running a model, maybe let it be random forests or decision trees or linear algebra or anything. the first thing we do is, chalo, let's apply the model and see how it goes. But before that, I think it's very, very important to like get started and see what are the possibilities and limitations, and also understand how important the EDA part is, like, the exploratory data analysis part of it, because that would give you the idea of what can be done. What are the data types of the data set? Are they categorical? Are they numerical? So all that is very important. And this is the basic structure of what we're going to do today. The first one is we're going to have like a broad overview of the data, and then actually look into the data and the possible EDA, and just have a little bit of peek into the notebook and discuss possible approaches and ideas, which would be great if we can interact with each other, unmute, discuss, and see what ideas all of us have. And the Q&A session, which will have more than 20 minutes of Q&A. So let's get started. So this year's theme is climate change. I remember last year's Women in Data Science Datathon topic was healthcare and was related to COVID, which is fair because everybody were in the headspace of COVID and all that. So, but I think all of us have had like enough of COVID, and we don't need to have it in our Kaggle data sets anymore. So the problem statement that we have for this year is very, very broad. Like the broad problem statement is that we have to predict the levels of energy consumption of a building that can help policymakers make judicious efforts to reduce emissions. So when it comes to climate change, there are many different verticals that we can probably look at. One thing is to reduce the consumption of energy, because we have renewable resources and non-renewable resources. Renewable resources are those which can be bought back, and that is okay. But the non-renewable resources are something which once we consume are just done, and the emissions that we have in the world is also very massive, and the effect is also very terrible. So if we can predict the levels of what the energy is being consumed of a building, then the policymakers and the climate change activists can make a judicious decision based on the data, based on the predictions that we have to reduce the emissions, right? Because they would always want to have a backup based on the data before they say anything. Otherwise, climate change itself is such a broad topic that all we talk about is global warming, but we don't really talk about the structured and the minuscule nitty-gritty parts of what really happens and what are the concrete steps that we can take. Right? So that is the main problem statement that we have for this year. So if we actually think about it, to forecast, predict, or estimate anything, we require relevant features for that, right? For example, if I want to forecast how healthy all of us are, the possible features would be, like, I'm diverging from the topic right now to just get an understanding of what kind of features we need to predict or forecast anything. And the whole point of any data set is that we have a set of X features and we have a set of Y features. X features are something that we use to predict the Y feature. So that is the basic structure of any data science data set. So based on that, to forecast or predict or estimate, for instance, your health, the kind of features that we need is probably the height of a person, the heart rate of a person, the number of days a person exercises, the various numericals or data regarding the person's health, weight, height, and things like that, right? So those are the relevant features that we need to predict how healthy the person is. So similar to that, in this context, to see how healthy the environment is, the kind of features that we need, since we are predicting the buildings, since we are predicting the levels of energy consumption, would be the features of the building itself. Like, for instance, all of you are living, in an apartment or an independent house, and to run a household or to run a house, we require a lot of energy for that as well. So considering that, number one, And the second set of features that we have in this data set is that the climate and weather variables for the regions in which the buildings are located. For instance, if you're living in Hyderabad, the kind of weather and the kind of climate that we have would impact the kind of energy that we consume, right? Like we might need AC in summer, but if we live in Kunur or something, we do not need AC. So the temperature of the area that we are living in, or the area the buildings are located in, is also like very important to like consider and predict the levels of energy consumption. So this is the basic overview. So since climate change is the theme, before actually looking into the data set, it's also very important to understand the source and effort that it actually takes to create the data set, right? So these are the two organizations that have created this data set, put together in a very organized format. Because now, if you don't have the problem statement at all, and you're just given the data set without any context, you'd still be able to figure out that, okay, what is happening here is that I have features of building, I have the features of the temperature and the weather of the place. So maybe it has something to do with predicting energy, right? So for the data set to be that clear, to get a properly formatted CSV file is not an easy task at all. A lot of data ingestion and harmonization has to be done by the researchers and the surveyors to get the data set in a usable format. So depending on the kind of data set, it is usually done in research labs, domain experts, and many times data engineers and data scientists themselves, right? So for today's data set that we're going to discuss, this has been created by the Climate Change AI, also called CCAI, which is a global initiative to like speed up work, which uses machine learning for climate change. And the other lab that also helped in creating the data set was Berkeley Lab, which is the National Laboratory of United States that also conducts scientific research. So they have accumulated the data set that we have today. And now if we look at the data here, this is again the format of the kind of data that we have, right? We have around 100K observations collected over 7 years. And for every state in the United States, we have around 7 or 8 states. We don't have all the 50 states, of course. For 7 years, in some parts of the states in the United States, we have around 100K observations. And in Kaggle, this has been divided into around 75,000 training data set and 25,000 rows in the testing data set. So this has been divided into 75 to 25% of train and test. And the predict variable, that means what we are going to predict here exactly, is a site EUI. So site EUI is a site energy usage intensity. That itself is basically the amount of heat and electricity consumed by a building as reflected in utility bills. I think if we simplify this is kind of very similar to maybe our electricity bill itself. But I think it's maybe more than that, because electricity bill is just the energy that you're consuming, but here it also depends on what kind of building you have. So considering all that, we see that in the X features, this has been kind of divided into, so we have like around 63 features, one of them being the Y predictable variable. And in those 63 features, we have the first set of features which just describes the building, right? So when it comes to describing the building, we have these. We have the building class, facility type, floor area, year built, energy star rating, and elevation. Elevation as being meaning like at what elevation the building is built on. And when it comes to facility type, it's been divided into a few categories like commercial building, residential building, and several other categories, subcategories based on that. And floor area, of course, describes how big the building is. And based on that, like if it's a smaller house, then of course the energy consumption would also be very small. And the energy star rating is inversely proportional to the site EUI. Like it's directly, like the more the energy star rating you have, the lesser the site EUI would be. And that is because like if your building is rated 5 stars, I mean, I'm not talking in the context of a 5-star hotel or anything, but if the energy star rating is 5, then that would mean that your building is built in such a way that it is very, very, very economical and eco-friendly. So that itself would directly impact how less the energy usage would be, because you are using very sustainable methods to do that. So these are the features that we have with respect to the building. And the other features that we have is the weather data. That means the weather in the location of where the building is, right? So I think we have around 3 into 12, the 36 columns of this data set is just the maximum, minimum, and the average temperatures for all the 12 months. That means we have the maximum temperatures, maximum temperature in January, maximum temperature in February, etc., minimum, and also the average temperatures. So this would give us like a very deep insight into what the weather update of the place is, based on which we can figure out like if the weather is cold all the time, then the kind of energy you'd use is different, right? You'd use heaters. If the weather is optimum, then you'd neither use air conditioning nor heaters. But if the weather is very hot, like maybe in Florida or Texas, then the kind of energy that you use would also differ. So to get insights into that, we might have to look into this part of the data. And the other data set that we have is snowfall, snow depth, precipitation, and things like that. This constitutes the weather part of it. And rest of it is like the temperature and also the wind data. So basically, this is how all the 63, this is what the 63 columns are, right? So this is one part of it. So now that we know what the X features are, the next step would be to see which X features are important, right? Like in terms of domain, we might consider that, okay, the building features must be important to like see what is happening. But unless we check the feature importance using a correlation matrix, we wouldn't really figure out what the important features are, right? So would anybody like to unmute themselves and tell what a correlation matrix is? Like, what do you think would you probably do to check the feature importance in a data set?
Participants, you can unmute and speak.
Actually, they can raise their hands. I'll give them access to unmute themselves.
Yeah, sure.
So if anyone wants to answer the question, you can just raise your hands. I'll give you access to speak.
Do we have anyone?
Participants, you can raise your hand.
Idea of what feature importance is. Like.
Yeah, we have an attendee, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, maybe that is the correlation coefficients. It shows the matrix shows the correlation coefficients, means how related more the target variable to the X variables.
Yeah,
how
exactly.
It is related.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what a correlation matrix is. Yeah. And also, any doubts so far? Like any questions that you want me to answer until now? You can raise your hand and I can do that.
So here you have a question. Can you please explain what is cooling degree days? Yeah, they have a question on the data set that you have displayed.
Yeah, so we have these two features, cooling degree days and heating degree days, right? this, to answer that, we might have to like look into the data again, like see how the correlation is and all that. So it's not very essential to like understand what each feature is doing, because many a time, like now in this data set, we have an idea, like when we see building class, we know that it has been categorized into different buildings. And when we see the maximum temperature, it's very obvious that what is being shown is a maximum temperature. But there are many data sets where the features are something that we have no clue about. Like we have no clue what the feature does based on the feature name, unless we dig into it and unless we do the feature importance and feature scaling all by ourselves and blindly decide that this is the most important feature because it is directly impacting the predict variable. So sometimes I think it's okay to not venture too deep into the data without looking at the data itself. So we'll leave that for later. And yeah, the answer we had about correlation matrix was pretty much perfect. So what we do is that now that we know all the X features, so the thing is we have 63 X features, right? So we have 63 columns. So imagine if we run all the 63 columns and put it in a correlation matrix, that would be huge. The matrix would have 64 rows and 64 columns, and the result would be very messy because we are just dumping all the features into one matrix and the number would be very far from reality, right? So to avoid that, what we could potentially do is to see the correlation amidst each category of features. And when I say each category of features, for instance, we divide only the building characteristics and find the individual correlation matrix for that, right? After that is done, we take only the maximum weather data and find a correlation with the site EUD again. Then we would get like the most important max temperatures for every month that are being impacted the site EUD. And again, if you take the minimum weather data and do the same, take the wind data and do the same, what we would essentially get is that how each feature is being impacted by the site EUD, which is the Y predictor variable. So by subsetting everything into 3 or 4 different correlation matrices, it would be very easy for us to like drop all these features that are least used here itself. Instead of dumping everything into a 64 into 64 correlation matrix, subsetting it this way would be efficient is what I am assuming. I could be right, I could be wrong, but this is one common data science mistakes that we would do. Like we would just dump everything into a correlation matrix. We would get a value, we just drop the corresponding features, and sometimes we would just end up dropping the most important features as well. So to avoid that from happening, this is a very crucial step that we could take, right? And at this stage, we can see if there is any. So this is one thing, we get all the significant features, which is great. And another thing that we can get out of feature importance and correlation matrix is that we can see if there is any significant relationship between two features themselves, right? Because in like, for instance, when we have snowfall inches and snow depth inches, both of them are essentially what? Snowfall inches is like the amount of snowfall that took place, like very similar to the amount of rainfall that took place in Nizampet or something like that. And snow depth is like the depth of the snow that is being there for like 4 or 5 days altogether. So this data would be very close. And both of them could also be interrelated to each other, right? That the probability of that happening is very high. And one primary prerequisite of any feature engineering is that we have to make sure that all the features are independent of each other. Like the features are not supposed to relate to each other. They're supposed to relate to the Y predictor variable, but not amidst each other. So all of them are supposed to be independent, completely independent. Like if we do a correlation matrix of just the features with each other, we are supposed to get very less coefficient because they're not supposed to be related to each other, right? So that way we can like check the which features are impacting each other and then drop one of them, or we can also combine both of them. We can see if we can add both the values, subtract both the values, or maybe find the ratio of both of them and combine them as one feature. That would sometimes that would make all the difference in getting a better performance or getting a better model when you go on to building a model. So this is where we have the feature importance. And the next step that we would do is feature scaling. So I think for this, I think it's better if we actually look at the data. So this is one of the notebooks that have been created by the participants themselves. So if we look at that, we can see that these are all the columns that I've shown, right? If you see the data type, you see that a year is integer, and object are all the categorical variables like state factor, building class, facility type are categorical variables. And most of them and all the values that we have based on the minimum, maximum, and average temperatures are int and float values. And based on this, we can make our assumptions. Like the observations that have been made here based on this plot is that most of the data is belong to year 6. That means year 6 has most of the data. So things like that, the basic EDA can be done here. And on top of that, another thing that we can do is check for missing columns, null values, and also understand which one of our categorical variables and convert them into non-categorical or numerical variables, because the machine learning algorithms cannot take categorical variables directly. So to do that, this is what they did. They checked all the null values. And if you see, you check the missing count here. Like you see that these are the features that have most missing count. And when you have a lot of missing values, if you end up removing all of them, that would be a wrong idea because half of our data would go missing. So to avoid that, we'll have to figure out what exactly is there to replace the missing values, which is itself a very judicious process that we need to take. We cannot randomly get rid of all the rows which has a null value or a missing value, or we cannot randomly replace it with a mean or the maximum amount, because we need to make sure everything has a logic behind that. Or of course, we can always do trial and error and see how the model is performing. But again, we have to make sure that every step that we take makes sense at the end of the day. So yeah, feature scaling is being done here. We take all the categorical columns and all the numerical columns. Categorical columns are basically those that have string values. And when I say string values, it's basically energy star rating and things like that, which describe something, right? So those are the values that we kind of get convert into numerical variables. So yeah, so this is essentially what we do in the EDA part. And the next step would be univariate analysis, multivariate analysis, and also just drawing a lot of visualizations. Because when we come up with a lot of visualizations by pie charts, graphs, and all that, we understand the distribution of the data. We see what the maximum, minimum, and average values, and also the percentiles of how the data is being spread, right? So for that, data.describe is being done here. If you see, this is like this very huge thing where data is being described. So if you see that the value that has to be predicted, the site EU high, has a maximum value of, the average value is around 82 and the maximum value is around 997, right? So the site EUI that has 997 has to be something which consumes a lot of energy. So we could get into the nitty-gritty of this part and see which building or which features are being contributed to like this amount of site UI, that means a bi-predictable variable. So that is one thing. And as we go further and see the univariate analysis, you can see the state factor that we have. State factor is nothing but the states that have the buildings in, like state 1 is, it's being anonymized. It could be something like Texas, Arizona, New York, and things like that. So to see if New York, for instance, has like more energy consumption than Ohio or things like that, that kind of gives us an idea of which states are taking judicious steps to make sure that their buildings are built very safely and things like that. And the site UI, the building class is being divided into commercial and residential, as I have already mentioned. And the facility type is also the subcategories of commercial and residential buildings. So as you see, this is the distribution across the years. And we see that year 6, that means the latest year, is where most of the data belongs to. So as you can see, there is a certain amount of data imbalance also. And yeah, univariate analysis is just comparing one feature with the other. Like here we are comparing the density with the floor area. Floor area is again the how big or how small the building is. And we are comparing density with the year built. And we see that most of the buildings have been built in this part. I think we'll have to like zoom this in to see more in specific, like if it has been built in 1998 or things like that. And we also see the Energy Star rating and how that is being divided. So this gives us like an individual depth of how each feature is performing along with its values, right? So all that is being done here. And the next step, yeah, as we continue going through the EDA and also the correlation analysis that we have done, and also handling the missing values, the next step would be converting the categorical variables into numerical variables. That is being done using, so we have 3 different methods to like do that. One is label encoder, one is one-hot encoding, and one is numerical encoding. Label encoder basically gives an order. Like for instance, if we, like here we have the states, right? We have state 1, state 2, state 3, state 4, state 5. This is converted into state 1 to 1, state 2 to 2, state 3 to 3. Like that, 1-to-1 functions are being given so that we get an idea of how that is being done. Post that, feature scaling is something that we have discussed already. And after this is done, we will try to figure out which model would suit this data set the best, right? So we have a lot of features and we have one bi-predictor variable. So to fit all this in, what could, is it like a classification problem or a clustering problem? Can anybody unmute and tell that based on what you know about data science so far? Like, do you think it's a classification problem or a regression problem?
Participants, you please raise your hand. I will allow you give you the access. Yeah, 1 minute. Yeah, you can go ahead.
It is a regression problem.
Yeah.
Because the target variable values is not having a particular range.
Yeah, exactly. So if it is a regression problem, then we have like a set of algorithms in mind, right? Like what could possibly be done? Like, can we use decision trees, for instance, for this? So ideas like that can come up based on the kind of problem that we figure out this is. And another interesting thing that we can do is we can always convert a regression problem into a classification problem by dividing all the values in site EUID that we have into different categories. That means we can give it bins and buckets. If the range is around 0 to 40 maybe, then we can say that the site EUD is very low. If the range is 40 to 80, then we can give it that the value is medium. So that way, sometimes converting a regression problem into a classification problem, it would also be a good idea, in the sense that we can use all of our classification problem approaches, all the algorithms that we have in mind in the classification problem approach. So that kind of helps us use like more and more techniques instead of sticking to just clustering methods, right? So that is one idea. So after we use like a certain algorithm to like fit and predict the values, we go to the Kaggle leaderboard. So this is the notebook. And you might have to submit a score as well. So I'll just show you how the submission is to be done, so that you don't have to, because making the first submission might sometimes be daunting, because you don't exactly know like what should be the way of submission. So once you fit a model, it could be anything. It could be like you can decide what it is based on your understanding of the data, because I cannot just say that use XGBoost directly, because XGBoost would probably give like a very good result, but that would just end up overfitting the model. So I always suggest that you start with like the basic models, like start with the basic linear regression model, start with decision tree, start with random forest, and then slowly increment it to like a complex algorithm or the ensemble models. And as you do that, you get an accuracy score, and that has to be fit into this submission file. Like for every Kaggle competition, you're supposed to submit like a submission file, right? Like for instance, just a second. Yeah, if you go to my submissions, you might have to upload your submission file here. So to upload the submission file, to submit a submission file, it has to be submitted in this format, right? So this is a code snippet that you can directly copy and give like, after you make the predictions, give what the prediction column is here, and then submit it. And as soon as you submit it, the Kaggle internal thing runs like an accuracy score of itself. And in the leaderboard, you can see your name, you can see the score, and you can also see how good your model is and where you're standing in the leaderboard. So this is how it works. And also one more important thing that we need to see when it comes to the leaderboard is that it is only being tested on 50% of data. It is not being tested on the entire data. So there's a huge chance that there might be quite a lot of overfitting, right? Because unless you're not testing on the entire data set, you wouldn't exactly know what if the predictions are accurate or not. So that is this sort of suspense that Kaggle competition creates, so that you have to figure out if the model is being overfitted or not yourself, and not blindly depend on the leaderboard to do that. So sometimes in many of the Kaggle competitions, it happens such that you might be top 3 in the leaderboard, but once the final checking is done for the 100% of the data of the test data, you might just find yourself drop to like 8th or 9th position as well. That has happened several times. So please make sure that your data is not overfit. And yeah, these are the first few steps that you can take to get your ground running. And I'm sure all your professors and peers can help you and each other out to in these 2 months of duration, to see how you can improve your score, how you can improve your model. And I hope I see many of you in the top 20, 25 of the leaderboard in this competition. I think we can take Q&A now.
Yeah, Thank you, Pragnya.
Yeah.
Participants, and now this is, I think we have already 2 questions. Yeah, I think the question is on data sets, and I think you have answered it. What are the data sets student has asked? Why features are independent? Why, as you told, feature should be independent, right? So they are asking the reason for it.
Yeah, sure. So so let us go back to basics and take a step backwards. So what is a data set, right? So if I share my screen again, data set is essentially something that has it is like a table, right? Like if you have any data is just a table. For instance, let us try to create a data set of our own of the students in CSE 2020 batch. So for that, what would you do? You would write name of the student, roll number, and probably marks in DBMS, marks in Python, and things like that. That itself is a data set. So data set is nothing but a set of columns. Columns is nothing but each feature, like name is one column, age is one column, roll number is one column, and you have the total marks, right? So based on all of this, we try to figure out one Y variable. Y variable is nothing but the feature that is to be predicted. So that is kind of like the first step in data set that we do. Like for instance, in the data set that we have here, let us just go to the data and see what we have, right? So here he said that we have 100K observations of building energy usage records collected over 7 years and a number of states within the United States. So if you break this down, we have around 1 lakh rows of data that have something like this. So this is the table that we have. We have the year, we have the state, we have the building. So these are all the features that we have. And at the end of this, we have the Y feature, which is the site EUD. So this is the data set that we have for this problem. Is that okay? Like, do you understand it better now?
Yeah, I think the person can answer yes. Yeah, I think he's okay with their answer.
Okay.
And any other questions you can type in?
There was a question about feature independence, right?
Yeah, why features are independent. Yeah, that's answered, I guess. So I have a question for participants, Pragnya. So as you told about their submissions and other things, you can also tell them how often their submission should take place, how often they have to update their submission. So will it help them in any way for?
So the thing about Kaggle competition is that every time you make any change to your model, unless you don't make a submission, you wouldn't know how it has performed. So every time you make any minor change also, you'll have to make a submission and see how it is. So usually we have around 10 to 15 most submissions that you can make in one day. So in one day, you can make around 10 to 15 changes to your model and then submit and see how your model is performing. So sometimes if your model is going on improving, you would know what to do exactly to make sure that the next time your model improves even further, right? So every time you have to keep creating the code snippet that I showed you for the submission data frame. You will have to create that every time you make a submission, give it submission 1, submission 2, submission 3, and just go on. And if you have any doubts, you can always approach me and I can help.
Yeah, we have 2 more questions. Hope you're reading it. What data set we should use? We should take for prediction testing or training. I think the participant, you can be more clear with the question.
Yeah, I think. So we have train.csv and test.csv in the data sets that have been given. You have to use train.csv.
Yeah. And explain the feature question. I think someone is unclear about the feature part still.
Features question as in, would you like to know what features are in general?
I hope we were clear about it. He's meaning something else. Can you make your question elaborate? Can you elaborate your question so that Pragna can answer you well?
Okay, meanwhile, I think we'll only final submitted. Not
Independence. Yeah, he's asking about feature independency.
okay, so feature independency is basically, let me put it in this way. For instance, consider you have 3 features, right? One is height, one is weight, and one is hair color. And this is being used to describe the person's person, right? So if you see, on an average, if a person is tall, then the weight would also be more, right? Like height and weight are kind of interrelated to each other because you have bone weight and you have many other factors that lead. Like, for instance, you also have a BMI chart where if you are, for instance, 5'6", you need to have a minimum weight of 60 or something like that, right? So in this case, since your height and weight are not independent in this case, because your height and weight are interrelated to each other. Based on your weight, your height is also determined. Of course, there are cases when but on an average, ideally, the scenario would be that weight and height are correlated to each other. Again, take the other feature that you have, which is hair color. So no matter what your height, no matter what your weight is, hair color is not dependent on any of these features at all, right? So that means hair color and height are independent of each other. So this context has to be put in this data set as well, where there should be no features that are like height and weight. All the features are supposed to be like height and the hair color. None of them are supposed to be dependent on each other, right? But we will definitely have features in the original data set that are dependent on each other. And we have to take care that we divide them and that we figure out that, okay, snowfall and snow depth are not independent, like they are heavily dependent on each other. So I might as well drop one of the columns, or maybe combine both of them. Maybe I'll find the ratio of it, or maybe I'll find the difference of it, but I'm going to combine both of the columns, right? So that is the idea of feature independence.
Yeah, thank you, Pragna. I think you were very clear this time. He would have understood. And would you like to tell them about any kind of hyperparameter tuning which would help with them in the submission? Any small info on it?
Yeah, like when it comes to hyperparameter tuning, we have different varieties, right? We have grid search CV, and so based on that, we might like have to give the specified parameters for each of them, give a range, run the entire model and see which are the best parameters that is giving the highest accuracy score. Then you know what parameters you could take to get the highest accuracy score. So this is basically mostly just trial and error. You'll have to give a range of parameters and see which is working out. So this is when multiple submissions idea comes in place, right? As you keep trying and failing, you submit one hyperparameters once, and the second time you improve upon it and submit another set of hyperparameters. So that way you will have to keep doing trial and error to get to the best score.
Yeah, that's right. Any other questions from the audience? I think
there are a couple more questions, ma'am.
If we face any issue during the date, then whom can we reach out to and where? Is there any platform for that? So if you go to the Kaggle contest itself, there's something called the discussion board. Let me share my screen again. Yeah, if you see, you have a discussion tab here. This is where all the people across the world who are participating in this competition start like a discussion thread with each other and keep saying like, "Arey, what do I do now? This is what I did. Do you think it's correct? What are the other approaches that you can take?" So you can always participate actively in this, and even if one of you start like a discussion thread, then just the BVRATians and the SVES guys can form a discussion thread and discuss amongst each other. It could be public, but that's okay, because in the data science community, there's nothing called being secretive or being extremely competitive. You can be public, share, discuss, and harmonize with each other all the time. So this is definitely one thing you can do. The discussion tab is one thing where you can keep your eyes on.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, we will be sharing the meeting recording. Don't worry about it. And one more question: will only final submitted model be taken for final standing, or even our previous submissions be considered? So this is a question from their side.
Yeah, so for instance, if you make like a total of maybe 30 submissions in these 2 months, you will, on the last day of the competition, you will have a tab here which says use this submission score as the final submission. So if you click on that, that will be the final submission that you can submit it to them. You can do that manually.
Yeah, user have the option to.
Yeah. Otherwise, the highest score that you have made in all the 30 submissions would be considered.
Automatically the highest score will be considered. If not, they have to.
Yeah.
They manually can say, right?
Yeah.
They can choose it. Okay. And can you suggest some resources where I can excel more in EDA and model development?
Yeah, definitely. I can probably mail it to maybe Dr. Padmanabham or Sulochana ma'am, and then I can definitely do that.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions from the audience? And Pragna, thank you. You have elaborated the session very well, very clearly. You have even told about the do's and don'ts to be considered in the data science things, and you gave a clear clarity on data independency, data imbalance. So really an awesome session, I think, for the beginners. And of course, they will be in touch with all of us to pursue in their submissions and other things. Any questions from the participants? You can utilize her expertise.
And if you want to reach out to me, then I can give you my mail ID.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. That's a good gesture from you. Thank you.
Yeah, you can reach out to me here. Sorry, I think I should send it there.
VP. Is it right? Or
yeah.
Yeah. I hope the audience has received it now.
Yeah.
Shall we close, or we can have a few more questions? Is that okay for you, Pragna? Or shall we close it?
Yeah, definitely. And also one advice that I have for all the BVRATians in general, like who are in their first, second year of engineering, like as long as you're in college, you have a very narrow idea of what you can probably do after fourth year of engineering, right? You think about placements, you think about the highest package, and you think the company which has the highest package is the best. But that's not always the case, there is a big, huge, wide world beyond campus placements and beyond fourth year of college. And it's always great to venture into that, figure out which suits you. It's not that you only have to go to Mission R&D just because it is a great opportunity. It is a wonderful opportunity, but if you don't make it, then it's absolutely okay to venture into other possibilities and realize that there is a big world out there, and you don't have to limit yourself where your only goal is to get placed or something. So that is one suggestion that I have for all of you.
Yeah, thanks, Pragna. You're absolutely right. This is the right time for them to understand how they have to proceed. So I think we don't have further more questions from the audience. They are clear. And once they get into the work, I think they will be getting more questions. And as you said, they will be using the discussions and other contacts. So thank you. And thanks, Prajna, for the eye-opening session for the students of SVES. And our sincere thanks to, there is one question. I want to know your journey of getting into data science. Yeah, this is an interesting question. Even we would like to hear it from you. I want to know your journey of getting into data science. Yeah.
I joined BVRIT Hyderabad in 2015. I was in the CS branch. And back then, there were just 120 students in CSC branch itself. And we were like the fourth batch. So we had just like 3 batches to look at. And most back then in 2015, the hype around data science had just started. Like there were a lot of newspaper articles about data science being one of the best fields in CSE department and all that. So based on all that, and in the second year of engineering, we had this professor called Nani Kalyan sir, who took a course on database management systems. And that's when my interest in DBMS and data in general started. And back then, most of my other peers in CSE were focusing on computative programming, WISE, mission R&D, and things like that. But for some reason, I was inclined towards data, numbers, and things like that. So in third year of engineering, there was something called Applied AI course. A professor called Srikanth Verma Chekuri, who started like this online ed tech startup called Applied AI course, had taken a workshop in our college, like in BVRIT Hyderabad. And he was someone who worked at Amazon as a machine learning scientist for 10 years and had got an MTech gate rank of 2 back in the day. Like his rank was 2. It was not 200, 2000 or anything, it was just 2. And the amount of knowledge that he had in machine learning, data science, and everything in general was immense. And I took up that course. And after that, I did that course very diligently in my 3rd and 4th year. And I landed an internship in data science itself in my 4th year of engineering. And I got placed at Bank of America, where most of my interview questions were based on the projects that I had done in the Applied AI course. And after that, I took up this fellowship program, which is an AI ML diploma called Tech Leaders Fellowship at Plaksha University. It is in, I took it in the COVID year, so I couldn't go to their university itself, but I'll just give you the link. Plaksha Technology Leaders Program. So I pursued this for 1 year in 2020 after quitting my job at Bank of America for a year. And doing this course kind of opened up like many horizons for me, because the kind of professors they had were from Purdue, UC Berkeley, IBM, and all, like it was great, like the kind of insights and the kind of exposure that I got there. And after that, I landed a data scientist job at Fractal AI, which is like the leading data science consultancy companies in India. So I've been working there for like 6 months now.
Yeah, it's a wonderful journey, Pragna. And you have a message from one of your professors, Mr. Chandrasekhar. So this is our teacher's highness. So he is so happy and he is thanking you for this wonderful session. So thank you, Professor.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. And there is one more question. I think, can you suggest some courses to learn data science? I think you can answer now, or you can mail us so that we can share with the participants.
Yeah, so one course that I have stuck to throughout my learning part of data science was Applied AI course by Srikanth Verma Chekuri. You can just hit it on the internet and you'll find it. Andrew NG and all are great beginners, but this course kind of helped me understand all the nuances of data science. And after this, the fellowship program that I took up in 2021.
Yeah, thank you, Pragna. So I think we can close up with the session. I'm not finding any more questions. You were very clear from your side. So that would be the reason, I guess. So thank you, Pragna. This is really an eye-opening session for the participants. And we professors are really proud to have you here today for this session. And my sincere thanks to the supporting partners, our Sri Vishnu Educational Society, Novartis, and Vavi. And special thanks to Ms. Sulakshana for her initiatives in making this excited event possible for the years, even for the previous years as well. So I would finally like to extend my sincere thanks and to the participants and the faculty members, mentors, and other data science enthusiasts who have participated today. Thank you all. Get motivated, sign up, join the WITS Datathon mailing list so that you will be getting the updates from them gradually. And go ahead, form your team, and be creative, have fun. Good luck. We'll meet you in the next workshop, which will be exclusive on EDA. Thank you, Pragna, and thank you all. We can sign off.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.